Be smart with pesticides. Tonight I'm going to stick mostly toward lawns, not so much agriculture and large acreages. I feel like we pretty much all have a lawn. There's always something that all of us can do with this kind of topic. So that's why I'm sticking with this, but I'll touch on some agriculture. I'm putting my sources up. First thing, I did a lot of research to do this, starting with Ohio State University's Bee Lab. If you have not been on their website, if you want more pollinator information, I strongly recommend you go there. There's so much to learn. Pollinator Initiative, Ohio Pollinator Habitat Initiative, great resources. And I did actually go to Michigan State University's information too, and I can do that because I'm a Youngstown State grad and I'm not bound to anybody like that. Scientific American, Planet Natural, all good sources. Xerces Society, excellent resources. So, in doing this, if you've never been on a website called Our World in Data, it's fascinating to see it broken down in graph form, in picture mode. And one of the things that really struck me, you can see down here, there is a slider going back to 1990 and to 2017. In sliding this back and forth, the United States number, the color did not change, neither did the China number. Some of these colors have actually gone down. France, Italy, Libya, and Iraq, they have reduced their pesticide use, but most of the others have gone up. So that's one thing that's one reason we're concerned about this, is because pesticide use, United States and China, the pesticide use has pretty much stayed high consistently from the 90s. And other countries are picking up the pace. So everybody wants that beautiful, lush, green, monoculture lawn. This is a nice example, not that these are natives in the background, but you know, there's flower borders and this lawn is beautiful, but that's hard work to get there. So it would be really easy for me to say, you know what, don't use any kind of pesticides, boom, drop the mic, leave the chat, and you know, we'll just go home. But I understand there are significant issues that you want to fix, but you don't want to hurt the bugs. So that's what I hope to cover tonight. But I'm going to start out with a little history on the lawn. So back in medieval times, if you owned a castle, you were dedicated to protecting that castle. And so you had a lovely mowed area, a lovely low grassland, so that your archers could see what's coming along the way. In the Renaissance period, especially in, say, France and England, all the rich people had these beautiful lawns. Usually they were planted in thyme so that you didn't have to really mow that off, or maybe chamomile was another good choice for this. But lawn bowling and golf, that's really when all of this got started. And so if you could afford it, it was a status symbol. And you know, when the colonists came over, they left the nobility behind, but they brought with them the idea of, I deserve a lawn, I deserve to go lawn bowling, and you know, golf, that's fun. So they brought that over. Unfortunately, their livestock could not handle the native grasses. They just trampled them and ate them, and the native grasses didn't work so well. So they brought over all of the seed that they were used to, including the dandelions and some of the other weeds and the clovers. Those are all imports, just like the lawn is. And of course comes the Industrial Revolution, and we get easier ways of taking care of lawns. And then really when suburbia hit after World War II, it became keeping up with the Joneses status symbol. You had to have that beautiful lush lawn. You had to have, you know, maintained and taken care of, mowing it all the time. And so that's kind of still a mindset around. And now it's a $99 billion industry. It's one of our biggest crops is grass. So a lot of time has gone into making pesticides, making things that will take care of everybody's issues. A lot of time has gone into bigger, better equipment to handle this stuff. Okay, lady, thank you. I did not come here for a history of the lawn. I came here to figure out how to get said beautiful lawn. So we're getting to that. So one of the big problems are weeds, grubs. I swear to God, when I get put into an old folks home, they're going to have to tell me repeatedly, Mrs. Westlake, there are no ticks on you, because I swear natural resource people, you tell them ticks and, you know, we get itchy. And mosquitoes. I mean, everybody's worried. There's encephalitis, there's West Nile, there's Zika, all kinds of things. So there's a real concern of how do I keep these pests out of my yard and away from my pets and away from me. And quite honestly, if I pulled this off the internet, but it looks like my yard, if this gives you anxiety, then we have some solutions. The bottom line is that any spray that lands on blooming weeds will end up in a bee's diet and other beneficial pollinators' diets. So what can we do to get the beauty and yet protect these guys? Why do we care? Mostly because in the last 20 years, as insects have developed against insecticides, they've had to become more toxic. And in some areas, it's a huge load that every pollinator is getting. So when it comes to toxicity, Roundup isn't necessarily the bad guy in this round. Roundup is an herbicide, and it's the least toxic to bees, but it kills their food sources, especially those early weeds that they really depend on. So obviously, when you get to insecticide, that's the most deadly to an insect because that's kind of its job. And the worst is the insecticide-fungicide combination. You've all heard about neonicotinoids, and if you haven't, you probably should, because that's what's getting the most attention when it comes to pesticides and bees. Come on, you can work. I know you can. Okay, so what's a neonicotinoid? So it's based off of the chemical structure of nicotine, and it may not necessarily kill a bee right off the bat. Maybe it will just kind of paralyze it. Maybe it will confuse it. Maybe it'll make it much longer to forage for plants, gets a little dizzy in the head, can't figure out where the hive is. It could also, there's a variety of things. It could reduce its fertility, or it could make it more prone to diseases, or maybe it is just that lethal right off the bat. And the big problem is that globally, neonicotinoids make up a quarter of the insecticides that we use. And why? Well, because it's effective. It's effective on a lot of different things that we're looking for. You can see that we even coat the seeds of plants right off the bat. If you go to a big box store and you buy plants, you might be buying things that have started its life with neonicotinoids already in it. Okay, great. So how does that affect bees? I'm spraying it on a plant to get rid of thrips. So how does a bee get it? Well, it can blow. It can get can go into the soil through rain. It can be taken up through the plant. It can be run off. There's a lot of different ways that this can happen, because if you spray even on a slightly windy day, it's going to carry quite a distance and cover other things. And so if multiple sources are spraying these sprays, it's going to end up in areas that had absolutely no intention of ever getting insecticide. If it gets in the water, being that it's a pesticide, it could kill the invertebrates living in streams. If it's in the soil, it could kill some of the beneficial bugs that are in the soil to help us. We talked about air. And one really cool thing about bees is they're actually, they get statically charged. So any kind of dust coming off of a plant or coming off of a spray could get actually attached to them, and they could take that back to the hive, and more bees that even weren't affected immediately could get affected by these insecticides. I thought this was fascinating. Elizabeth Long at the Ohio State Bee Lab, she looked at the pollen that bees were collecting to look at what kind of pesticides are we talking about? Are they all the neonicotinoids, and that's kind of this blue area over to from this blue to say like in the pink, and this was a non-agricultural area that she looked at, even next to a treated cornfield. There were many more pesticides than that cornfield had. And these two that I highlighted here, the phenolphthalein and the prolethrine, that's actually flea and tick treatment. So think about how you're trying to protect your dog. That, any treatments that you're doing on your lawn, that's getting into the pollen. Is it necessarily killing the bees? Maybe not necessarily, but it's definitely in their pollen. It's in their food source. And the more chemicals, it's just a more dangerous situation. Okay, yeah, I love bees. I want to protect them, but still ticks and mosquitoes and grubs, gross. Okay, let's start with ticks. I don't like them, but we'll start with them anyway. Ticks, they move slowly. They like to climb, but they're not traveling far distances. They're brought in on birds primarily and mice. So if you think about your bird feeder, that's one of the most dangerous places for ticks. They're going to drop off those birds. They're going to come into your yard. It's been proven that widespread treatment for ticks is really not that effective. A better thing to do is actually just alter their habitat so they don't survive. Black-legged ticks, the ones that carry Lyme disease, they are only living in forests. They desiccate in shorter grasses. Dog ticks, you're not going to find them in the forest. You're only going to find them in grasses. So they're very specialized in their habitats, and there are things that we can do to make sure that we're limiting our exposure to these things. Mostly mulch, and so put your bird feeders in a mulched garden bed and keep your grass relatively short. Even the 3-inch height, no more than 3 inches, is going to keep ticks at bay. Mice, I love this idea. It's permethrin soaked cotton balls. So you soak the cotton balls really well, you stuff them into even a toilet paper roll, and you put them where you know the mice are going to be. They take it back to their nest, and they treat themselves for ticks with the permethrin soaked cotton balls. And you can also remove their habitat too, because you really don't want mice around your house. But that will help you get rid of ticks. Other things, sulfur treatments will work for ticks, but sulfur hugely changes the pH. So always, always, always start with a soil test if you're going to add things like sulfur and lime to change pH. Make sure you know where you are before you start with any kind of treatments. And after you've put your bird feeder in the mulched area, if you plant things like garlic, chrysanthemums, mint, and lavender, then not only could you, feed the bees with some of those, but also ticks don't like them. So yay, that's a win-win for us. Mosquitoes are a little harder. They travel 1 to 3 miles. You kind of need your your neighbors to help out in these things. But the big thing is any standing water, a half-inch deep, it could become mosquito breeding grounds. So we have to be conscious of clogged gutters and making sure your rain barrel has a screen on it. Even the thicker plants like English ivy, they could be harbingers of mosquitoes. And the other thing you could do is, if you have a pond, if you have some water features that you like, make sure that there are plenty of predators out there. Mosquitoes are what's for dinner for a lot of things. And like my dragonfly guy up here, one of the best assassins for mosquitoes. If you can attract some of those in there, then they can help get rid of mosquitoes. But in bird baths, you probably want to put a mosquito dunk in so that you don't have that breeding ground. And there are plants that will keep mosquitoes at bay as well, like lavender and catnip and bee balm. So there's plants that pollinators like and mosquitoes and ticks don't. So win-win situation. Grubs. Grubs are actually edible. So, I mean, really, you could go the total organic route and just have them for dinner or not. That's gross. But a turf grass with a more dense root system will tolerate grubs a lot better. So you want a turf grass like a tall fescue. It's going to go much deeper than that Kentucky bluegrass. Yes, Kentucky bluegrass is pretty, but it might not get as deep of a root system and thus become a much higher target for grubs. So that 3 inches of mowing will help the grass get that more dense root system. And again, if you have a pollinator-friendly area, so if you set aside a little area that you don't want to mow anymore, make that pollinator friendly, and then go focus strictly on turf grass, that's not going to appeal so much to bees. So you can go ahead and treat the turf grass that has no weeds in it for grubs, especially like Grub X. That's okay, that won't hurt the bees so much. And timing is also really good. So July, so now, or even later in the month, is a really good time for grub control. Another thing to think about is, I know there are trees that get affected by funguses, and the fungus will live in the soil after pollinating or after flowering time for trees. So say now would be a good time to treat trees for, or the ground around trees for wilt and fungus. So with weeds, if you're a lazy yard person like I am, then I would probably say try and skip the chemicals, enjoy the diversity in your yard. There's going to be a lot of things that pollinators will like. I mean, right now my yard is almost white with pollen and clover, and it looks really pretty and bees like it, and I don't mind so much. But if you want that beautiful turf grass, again, make sure you have an area that's safe for pollinators. And also there are spot treatments to do that are much better than the grandiose applications. It's going to, you have to target what you want to get rid of, and that's a much more efficient application. It's going to do better for you and the pollinators. Don't apply on windy days, and you want to pay attention to, is it going to rain? You know, is this stuff going to be taken down into the soil? Is it going, are we in a really wet time and it's just going to wash right off into sewers or ditches or anything like that? And also, pollinators aren't really active in the evening for this kind of stuff. Bats, yes, but bees and other things that might be going to some of these more ground plants, they're not going to be active in the evening, so that's a good time to target your applications. The EPA put out a really good advisory box for chemicals. Please read labels and pay attention to is it, how this is going to affect bees. One thing that I found amazing was even something like diatomaceous earth. We all have heard about diatomaceous earth. That can negatively affect pollinators. If you have high concentrations of vinegar, that can negatively affect pollinators. So too much is a good thing, I guess, or a bad thing in this case. And so just be conscious of anything that goes on a spray can wind up in a bee's diet. So on to agriculture. There are numerous organizations like the Pollinator Initiative and OPHI that would love to help larger tracts of land that are agriculture producers. They would love to help you achieve a more friendly bee farming practice. And they're not asking for very much. They're asking for maybe 5% of your field. Usually you can use what's along the wood line where there's a lot of shade, not a lot of crop is growing there anyway. Turn that over to bee habitat and be mindful of your spray. Maybe, use less spray. As we use more spray, we're getting resilient things that become much more of a problem. So Pollinator Partnership put out a good guidance that will help you. And really, if you wanted to become a bee-friendly farm, it really doesn't cost that much. It's like a $45 thing a year, and then some of the changes that you make. So I really don't think that you'll see a negative effect on your farming. And I'm going to finish with this. I heard about this years ago. So it's been going on, oh gosh, probably at least 10 years now. These are Chinese people hand pollinating every pear blossom. So they collect the pollen and then they hand pollinate every single blossom. If you think almond butter is expensive now, imagine how much hand pollinated almond butter would cost. We have enough problems with trying to get labor that bees are really cheap labor in this. And actually in these parts of China, they've used pesticides so much that it's actually cheaper to use people than to bring in bees, which is like mind-blowing. So that's what I think about, I guess, when I think about bees and pollinators is I really don't want to climb up a pear tree to get pears, to hand pollinate, to paint pollen every time. And I'll get off my soapbox now, and I will answer questions. Will a mosquito dunk in a bird bath hurt bees, butterflies, or birds? If you follow the instructions, you might not need the whole mosquito dunk for that. I would go by just the dose that's recommended, and I would say it's probably going to be safer for birds that way. If you over apply, it could negatively affect them, but if applied correctly, then it should be fine.
All right, down at the bottom of your screen, if you have a question, there's a question and answer box, it says Q&A, and there's also a chat box. So if you have any questions, please feel free, put them in the chat. Looks like we have a few more coming in, Suzanne.
Okay. Ooh. I did not look up specific sprays for specific bugs. I was kind of doing a overview. So the question is opinion on BT spray for cabbage loopers.
So just my guess on that one, and you know, I am not a pollinator expert, but BT, you know, causes the insects, they ingest it and causes their stomachs to rupture, and that's how kills the insect that you're going after. Theoretically, pollinators shouldn't be visiting cavities. There's not a flower. So I would say that that's not an issue necessarily, but again, I haven't done much research on it.
Yeah, my Xerces source for common pesticides doesn't include that, but let me do a real quick. While I'm looking that up.
I just found a source, Michigan State University. Says that BT is very safe for pollinators. It breaks down quickly in the sunlight and becomes ineffective after a few days.
Okay.
Yeah.
So bird baths, yes, they should be cleaned and emptied every day. Fresh water put in. Some people might get a little lazy on that, and so that's where if your bird bath just kind of sits there the whole time. But yes, that's the best option. And keeping water in motion will keep mosquitoes away. They like that non-moving stuff. The cotton ball remedy was permethrin-soaked cotton balls to give to mice as bedding to prevent ticks. And I really like that idea of treating ticks like that. There are actually some deer feeders that have something that they bump their head on, and it's treated with permethrin, so that as they go in, their head gets treated with permethrin. So a lot of people are looking at permethrin as a tick treatment in the wild.
We do a similar thing for flies, and in livestock, there's a couple feeders like that where they are applying it themselves. So that makes sense. The one question about the BT, that source that I found, I'm putting that in the chat box now, and it's a really nice article. It looks like from Michigan State University on how to control invasive pests while protecting pollinators and other beneficial insects. So if your interest has been piqued by this presentation, that would be a good read as well as the handouts that we have linked to the website.
Yeah, on the website, I included the Xerces Society's pesticide list, and it includes a lot of different ones that you might think are safe, but they say that it's a medium risk or a medium high risk. And so it's a really good source. It's not just going to tell you only use these, but this is what you can expect if you use something else.
Great. And then, did you mention the other ones? There's a few more handouts, the DIY bee lawn and lawn care for pollinators.
Yeah, I also included a few tips and tricks for lawn care for pollinators in there that have some really good information too.
All right. Well, if anyone has any more questions, now would be the time. Put them in the chat. We'll get them answered or try to get them answered. We'll give you a few minutes. Type up any questions you have. Someone asked if they said they're not sure if they signed up for future sessions. What should I do about that? Robin, you are signed up. If you signed up for this one, you are signed up for all of them. So that's the trick that we did. We had everybody, when you signed up for all of them. You can opt out if you're not interested, but for the sake of simplicity, we made it so once you signed up for the symposium, you signed up for every presentation. So you will be getting a reminder, should be getting one a day before and an hour before the presentation. We'll give you 2 reminders, and every Wednesday at 7, for the next 2 Wednesdays, we'll be giving a presentation. We're not sure if we're going to continue it after that. We're getting good numbers and good feedback. But like I said at the beginning, this was originally supposed to be an in-person event, and we do hope to have an in-person event next year. So we're going to start working on that program soon as well. So a few more questions, Suzanne. Are the older ones online yet? No, they are not. I'm working on editing them right now, and they should be up soon. When they are, I will be able to send everybody a link to it. And then if you follow any of our organizations on Facebook or get any of our newsletters, it should be in that as well for people that want to watch the videos again or for the first time. Someone said they really appreciate the sessions. Lots of useful information, and Suzanne was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then someone mentioned that they like the small weekly doses. Yeah, that's a lot of good information, and hopefully it's not too overwhelming breaking it up on a week by week pattern there.
So Sandy Miller put in the chat that, do I have a link for the Diatomaceous Earth? And I'd like to address that a little bit better. That's in the SWCD post that's on the website, and it's listed as low to medium, so it's not as bad as others, but it's definitely something to be mindful of, that if you maybe use it wrong or use it too much, that it could become an issue.
Great. Someone asked if
Chipmunks probably do carry ticks, yes. Anything that is kind of in the ground, they're going to have ticks. So yes, chipmunks probably do carry ticks. Something else to worry about.
no one can get away from them. Don't bring chipmunks.
I'm itchy already.
All right, last call. Any more questions? We'll get them answered for you. If not, like I said, Suzanne Westlake from the Soil and Water Conservation District. If you have any more questions for her or a variety of any other topics, you can give the Soil and Water Office a call. And if you have any further questions later in the week about the Pollinator Symposium or anything else, you can contact me directly via email, and I will get back to you. So with that, looks like no one else is asking any questions. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and hopefully we will see you next week for the next installment of the 2020 virtual Ashtabula County Pollinator Symposium.
Thanks, everybody.